Captain Hyun-ki pressed his face against the cold glass of the observation deck. His breath made small clouds on the surface as he stared into the darkness of space. 3 days ago, the long-range sensors had picked up something that made every military officer on Earth wake up in cold sweat. The Vorthic Empire was coming, their fleet stretched across space like a metal storm. Each ship was bigger than the largest cities on Earth. There were 3,000 of them moving in perfect formation. Through the void, their hulls gleamed with technology that Earth scientists could only dream of. Hyun-ki had been a soldier for 20 years. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion and the Europa mining wars, but he had never seen anything like this. The enemy ships looked like floating mountains made of dark metal. Their weapons could probably destroy entire continents with a single shot down. In the research station, Commander Jinwoo was reading reports from every military base on Earth. The numbers were not good. Earth had maybe 400 ships total. Most of them were cargo vessels that had been quickly fitted with weapons. A few were proper warships, but they were tiny compared to what was coming. The Vorthak had sent a message, too. Days ago, it was simple and terrifying: surrender now or be destroyed. They gave Earth exactly 1 week to decide. The week was almost over. Jinwoo walked through the corridors of the research station. The walls were covered with screens showing the approaching fleet. Every few minutes, the computers updated the enemy position. They were getting closer. The fleet would reach Earth in less than 2 days. In the deepest part of the station, Dr. Sumin was working alone in her laboratory. She had been there for 3 days straight, sleeping only when she collapsed from exhaustion. Her clothes were dirty and her hair was messy, but her eyes burned with determination. Sumin had been working on her secret project for 5 years. The military had rejected her ideas. They said her designs were impossible. They said she was wasting time and resources, but she never stopped believing. The project was a single ship, unlike the massive warships that filled space battles. This vessel was small. It was barely bigger than a fighter jet. But hidden inside its hull was technology that could change everything. Sumin had discovered something that other scientists thought was impossible. She had learned how to create artificial black holes. These were not the giant black holes that ate stars. These were tiny ones that could be controlled and contained. The ship she built could make these black holes appear anywhere she wanted. The energy from collapsed stars could be focused into weapons that nothing could stop. No shield could block them. No armor could resist them. She called her creation the Stellar Fang. The ship looked strange compared to normal vessels. Its hull was smooth and curved like a living creature. There were no visible weapons or engines. The surface was covered in a material that seemed to absorb light, making it hard to see even in bright areas inside the ship. The technology was even more unusual. Energy flowed through transparent tubes along the walls. The light was beautiful but also frightening because it represented power beyond imagination. The pilot seat was connected to advanced computers that could link directly to a human brain. For years, Sumin had worked alone in her lab. The military had given her a small budget and told her to research new materials. Instead, she had used every resource to build her impossible ship. She had stolen components from other projects. She had worked with black market dealers to get rare elements. The hardest part was the energy core. This was the heart of the ship, where the artificial black holes were created and controlled. It required materials that barely existed on Earth. Sumin had to create new forms of matter in her laboratory using particle accelerators and quantum manipulators. The core was about the size of a basketball, but it contained more energy than a nuclear power plant. The black holes inside were smaller than atoms, but they had the gravitational pull of entire planets. The energy was contained in quantum fields that existed in multiple dimensions at once. When the Vorthak fleet was first detected, Sumin knew this was her chance. She had to prove that her ship could work. She had to show that one small vessel could stand against thousands of enemy warships. The problem was that the ship had never been tested with a human pilot. The computer simulations showed it would work, but simulations were not the same as reality. The energies involved were so powerful that they could kill a pilot if something went wrong. Sumin worked day and night to prepare the ship. She checked every system twice. She ran diagnostics on all the quantum containment fields. She made sure the life support systems could handle the stress of combat. The artificial black holes were the most dangerous part. If the containment failed, the ship would be destroyed in seconds. The pilot would be crushed by gravitational forces strong enough to bend space and time the energy release. Would be visible from other star systems, but Su-min had no choice. Earth was about to be invaded by the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The conventional weapons would be useless against Vorthek technology. The only hope was her untested ship with its impossible weapons. She also had to find a pilot. The ship required someone with very specific abilities. The neural interface was designed to work with only certain types of brain patterns most people would go insane trying to control. Such powerful forces, the military had a database of potential pilots who had been tested for advanced spacecraft. Su-min searched through hundreds of profiles. Looking for someone who matched the requirements, the person had to be young because older brains could not adapt to the interface. They had to be skilled but not too experienced because the ship worked differently from normal vessels. Finally, she found a candidate. Taeho was only 24 years old. He had excellent reflexes, and his brain scans showed the right neural patterns. He had some flight experience, but not enough to develop bad habits that would interfere with the ship's unique control. Su-min sent a message to the military requesting Taeho be assigned to her project. She did not tell them what the project was. She just said it was classified research that required a test pilot. While she waited for approval, Su-min made final preparations to the ship. She loaded the quantum computers with tactical data about the Vorthek fleet. She programmed the weapon systems with targeting algorithms. She made sure the energy core was stable and ready for combat. The ship was ready. The pilot was chosen. All that remained was to test whether human technology could defeat an enemy that had conquered half the galaxy outside the research station. The Vorthek fleet continued its approach. Their ships moved through space like sharks, swimming through dark water. Soon they would arrive at Earth, and the real battle would begin. Su-min looked at her creation one last time. The stellar Fang sat in the launch bay waiting for its moment. The ship that everyone said was impossible was about to prove that humans could build miracles when they had no other choice. Admiral Krelvox stood on the command bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue planet grow larger on the main screen. Earth looked peaceful and defenseless, exactly like the 47 other worlds he had conquered for the Vorthek Empire. His fleet was the largest ever assembled by any civilization in the galaxy. 3,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of advanced technology. The smallest vessel in his fleet was larger than anything humans had ever built. Krelvox had been chosen for this mission because of his perfect record. He had never lost a battle, never failed to complete an objective the Emperor trusted him to bring Earth into the Empire quickly and efficiently. The Vorthak were an ancient race that had ruled space for over 10,000 years. Their technology was so advanced that most species surrendered without fighting. They knew resistance was hopeless against such overwhelming power. Each Vorthak warship was protected by energy shields that could deflect any known weapon. The hulls were made from quantum metal that existed in multiple dimensions, making them nearly indestructible. The weapons could shatter planets and boil oceans. Admiral Krelvox had studied Earth military capabilities through spy networks and captured technology. The humans had primitive spacecraft that still used chemical rockets for propulsion. Their weapons were based on simple projectiles and basic energy beams. The intelligence reports showed that Earth had approximately 400 ships total. Most were cargo vessels hastily converted for military use. A few were proper warships, but they were laughably small compared to Vorthek technology. Krelvox expected the battle to last than 1 hour. The human fleet would be destroyed completely, leaving Earth defenseless. The planet would surrender to avoid total annihilation. This was how it always happened on Earth. Commander Bioram was coordinating the defense from the orbital command station. She had been a military officer for 15 years, but she had never faced anything like this. The enemy fleet was so large it would take hours just to count all the ships. Bioram looked at the tactical displays showing Earth forces scattered around the solar system. 400 ships against 3,000. The odds were beyond hopeless. They were facing complete extinction. Most of the human ships were stationed near Earth and Mars. The outer planets had been abandoned because there were not enough vessels to defend everything. The plan was to make the enemy fight for every kilometer of space, but Bioram knew the plan would fail. The Vorthak weapons could destroy their ships from distances too far for human weapons to reach. It would be like fighting tanks with wooden clubs. The only hope was the secret project in the underground research station BOREM had been told that Dr. Sumin was working on something that could change the battle, but she had not been given any details about what it was. Captain Hanke watched the enemy fleet through the observation windows of the command station. The Vorthak ships moved in perfect formation like a school of metal fish swimming through the void. Their hulls gleamed with power that humans could barely comprehend. The enemy vessels were beautiful in a terrifying way. They looked like works of art, created by a civilization that had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. Every line and curve spoke of technology refined over millennia. And Key had fought in space battles before, but those were against other human factions using similar technology. This was different. The Vorthak were so advanced they might as well be gods compared to human science. The communications officer reported that long-range sensors were picking up massive energy readings from the enemy ships. The power levels were off the charts. Each vessel contained more energy than Earth's entire electrical grid. Admiral Krelvox opened a communication channel to Earth. His message was broadcast on every frequency so that all humans could hear it. The translation computers converted his words into hundreds of different languages. His voice was cold and mechanical, without emotion or doubt. People of Earth, you are surrounded by the Imperial fleet of the Vorthak Empire. Your military forces are primitive and cannot resist our technology. You have 12 hours to surrender unconditionally. If you choose to fight, your species will be completely destroyed. We have eliminated 47 civilizations that refuse to submit. You will not be the first to survive resistance. Choose wisely. Your planet is beautiful and could serve the Empire well, but we will not hesitate to reduce it to cosmic dust if you force us to demonstrate our power. The message ended, leaving Earth communications silent. Everyone who heard it felt the weight of absolute certainty in the alien commander voice. This was not a bluff or a negotiation. It was a simple statement of fact. BOREM looked at the countdown timer that appeared on every screen. 12 hours until the ultimatum expired. 12 hours to decide the fate of humanity. 12 hours to find a miracle in the research station. Dr. Sumin was making final preparations to the Stellar Fang. She had heard the ultimatum and knew there was no time for more testing. The ship had to work perfectly on the first Trideho. Was running through mental exercises to prepare for the neural interface. The connection to the ship was still difficult and dangerous, but he had learned to control the energy flows and focus his mind. The Stellar Fang sat in the launch bay, ready for its first combat mission. The ship looked small and fragile compared to the massive alien warships, but appearances could be deceiving. Sumin had designed the vessel to be invisible to enemy sensors. It would appear as nothing more than cosmic dust on their detection systems. The Vorthak would not know they were being hunted until it was too late. The artificial black hole weapons were charged and ready. These were not like any weapons ever created. They could appear unaware without warning and destroy anything they touched. No shield could stop them. No armor could resist them. Admiral Krelvox was confident that the humans would surrender. Most species chose survival over pointless resistance. The few that fought were eliminated quickly and completely. His ships took position around Earth in a perfect sphere formation. Each vessel was positioned to provide covering fire for the others. The formation was designed to prevent any escape and maximize firepower. The Vorthak had used this same formation to conquer dozens of worlds. It was impossible to break through, impossible to outflank, impossible to defeat. They would wait for the surrender that always came, but Admiral Krelvox did not know about the small ship hidden in the underground hangar. He did not know about the weapons that could bend space and time. He did not know that humans had learned to create artificial black holes. The countdown continued as both sides prepared for what was coming. The Vorthak fleet waited with the patience of predators who knew their prey was trapped. The human defenders prepared to fight a battle they could not win. Deep underground, the Stellar Fang powered up its systems. The energy core began to glow with the light of collapsed stars. The ship that everyone said was impossible was about to prove that humans could build miracles. The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin. Taeho arrived at the research station not knowing why he had been chosen. The military transport had picked him up from the training base without explanation. He was told only that a special project needed a test pilot with his specific skills. When he first saw Dr. Sumin, she looked like she had not slept in weeks. Her lab coat was stained with coffee and her hands shook from too much caffeine, but her eyes were sharp and focused. She studied him like a scientist examining a rare specimen. The research station was buried deep underground, far below the surface, in chambers carved from solid rock. This was where the most secret military projects were hidden from enemy sensors and spy satellites. Sumin led Taeho through corridors filled with advanced equipment. The walls hummed with power from massive generators. The air itself seemed to vibrate with energy from unknown machines. Around every corner were laboratories working on technologies that did not officially exist. Finally, they reached the main hangar. The doors were 20 meters tall and made from metal stronger than diamond. When they opened, Taeho saw something that made him forget how to breathe. The stellar Fang sat in the center of the hangar like a sleeping predator. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its hull curved in ways that seemed impossible. The surface absorbed light, making it look like a whole cutout of reality. Taeho had flown many different spacecraft during his training. He knew fighters and bombers and transport ships, but this vessel looked like nothing he had ever seen. It did not look like it was built by human. Han Sumin walked around the ship, touching its hull with pride in her eyes. She explained that this was not just a new type of aircraft. This was a weapon that could change the course of the war. The ship could do things that violated the basic laws of physics. Hull was made from materials that existed in multiple dimensions. The engines did not burn fuel, but instead folded space and time. The weapons created artificial black holes that could destroy anything they touched. Taeho listened to her explanation, but most of it sounded like science fiction. The concepts were too advanced for him to understand. How could a ship create black holes? How could engines fold space itself? Sumin opened a hatch in the side of the ship. The interior glowed with soft blue light. Energy flowed through transparent tubes along the walls like liquid lightning. The pilot seat was surrounded by controls that looked more like art than technology. She explained that the ship was controlled by direct neural interface. The pilot did not use hands to fly the vessel. Instead, the computer connected directly to the brain. The ship became an extension of the pilot's body, and Min Taeho sat in the pilot seat for the first time. The moment he touched the neural interface, his world exploded with new sensations. He could feel the ship's power flowing through his nervous system. He could sense every component, every system, every quantum field. The feeling was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a waterfall. The energy threatened to burn out his brain. His vision went white, and he almost lost consciousness. Sumin quickly disconnected the interface before permanent damage occurred. She explained that learning to control the ship would take time. The human brain was not designed to handle such massive amounts of information. Most people would go insane from the neural overload. Only someone with very specific brain patterns could survive the connection. For 3 days, Taeho practiced with the interface. Each session lasted only a few minutes before the overload became too dangerous. Slowly, his brain began to adapt to the strange sensations. He learned to filter the information and focus on what was important. The ship had abilities that seemed magical. It could become invisible to all types of sensors by bending light around its hull. It could pass through solid matter by shifting its molecular structure to another dimension. It could move faster than light without using traditional hyperspace technology. During his first actual flight, Taeho discovered that piloting the stellar Fang was like learning to control a new body. The ship responded to his thoughts and emotions, not just his conscious commands. When he wanted to go left, the ship turned left before he could think about how to make it happen. The weapon systems were the most difficult to understand. The ship could create tiny black holes anywhere within a 1,000-kilometer radius. These gravitational anomalies would pull in matter and energy, destroying anything they touched. The pilot had to be very careful not to create them. Sumin worked with him to develop mental techniques that would help him stay in control. During high-power maneuvers, the energy levels could overwhelm his consciousness. He had to learn meditation and focus exercises to keep his mind sharp under extreme stress. The ship also had defensive capabilities. It could create energy shields that existed in multiple dimensions, making them impossible to penetrate. It could teleport short distances by folding space around itself. It could even become intangible for brief periods. Each day, the Vorthak fleet grew closer. Long-range sensors showed their formation approaching Earth like a slow-moving storm. The enemy ships maintained perfect spacing and moved with the confidence of a force that had never been defeated. Commander Jin Wu visited the hangar regularly to check on the progress. He was nervous about putting all of Earth's hopes on one untested ship and one inexperienced pilot, but the conventional military had no other options. Their weapons would be useless against Vorthak technology. Taeho pushed himself harder during each training session. He knew that millions of lives depended on his ability to master this impossible ship. The pressure was enormous, but it also motivated him to go beyond his limits. On the final day of training, something changed during his practice flight. The ship system suddenly felt natural instead of alien. The neural interface became comfortable instead of overwhelming. Taeho realized that he was no longer fighting the ship, he was becoming one with it. Su-min monitored his brain patterns from the control room. She saw the moment when pilot and machine achieved perfect synchronization. The readings showed harmony between human consciousness and artificial intelligence. The Stellar Fang was ready for combat. Its weapons had been tested on asteroid targets. The results were spectacular. Small rocks disappeared, instantly consumed by gravitational forces that bent space itself. Larger asteroids were torn apart by tidal forces that no material could resist. Taeho climbed out of the pilot's seat, feeling confident for the first time since arriving at the station. He had mastered the impossible ship. Now he had to prove that human ingenuity could defeat an enemy that ruled the stars outside. The underground hangar, the Vorthak fleet continued its approach. Their massive ships moved through space like metal mountains drifting through the void. Soon they would arrive at Earth, and the greatest battle in human history would begin. The Stellar Fang sat ready in the launch bay. Its energy core hummed with barely contained power. Its weapon systems were charged and waiting. Its pilot was prepared to take on an entire galactic fleet. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. Admiral Krelvox had lost over 800 ships and still could not find his attacker. The Vorthak fleet was spread across space searching for an enemy that seemed to exist only as destruction and death. He ordered every remaining ship to hunt down the mysterious human vessel. 3,000 ships had become 2,000, then 1,500. The losses were beyond anything in Vorthak military history. The alien commanders used every scanning technology known to their advanced civilization. They deployed quantum sensors that could detect individual atoms. They used gravitational detectors that could find objects by their effect on space. Time itself, nothing worked. The ghost ship continued to strike without warning, appearing only as explosions that consumed their vessels. The Stellar Fang moved through their fleet like a predator that could not be seen or caught. Taeho had learned to use the ship neural interface perfectly. The connection no longer caused him pain or confusion. Instead, it felt natural, like controlling his own body. The ship responded to his thoughts faster than conscious commands. He could feel the enemy ships around him through the vessel's sensors. Each Vorthak warship appeared in his mind as a glowing target. The ship's AI helped him select the most effective attack points. The artificial black holes were becoming easier to control. Taeho could create them at any distance, in any size. The gravitational weapons could appear inside enemy hulls or between ships to create chain reactions. Engineer Hei-1 monitored the battle from the research station, watching impossible readings flood her screens. The Stellar Fang was performing beyond all design specifications. The ship was evolving, becoming something more than its creators had imagined. The vessel power output was increasing with each attack. The AI systems were learning and adapting faster than anyone thought possible. The ship was rewriting its own programming to become more efficient. Dr. Su-min watched her creation with pride and growing concern. The ship was exceeding all her calculations. The neural interface was creating a feedback loop between human consciousness and artificial intelligence. Taeho was changing too. The constant exposure to the ship's advanced systems was expanding his mental capabilities. He could process information faster than any human should be able to. His reaction times were becoming superhuman. The Vorthak tried new tactics to stop their invisible enemy. They created gravity mines that would trap anything with mass. These weapons could detect and capture objects by their gravitational signature. The Stellar Fang simply adjusted its mass by shifting matter to parallel dimensions. The gravity mines detected nothing as the ship passed through their fields like a ghost made of energy. Admiral Krelvox deployed quantum torpedoes that could track any energy signature. These weapons were designed to follow their targets through hyperspace. Across multiple dimensions, the ship AI analyzed the incoming weapons and created countermeasures. The Stellar Fang generated false energy signatures that led the torpedoes away from their real target. The weapons exploded harmlessly in empty space. The Vorthok attempted to collapse local spacetime using massive gravitational generators. If they could not find their enemy, they would destroy the space where it might be hiding. Teho felt the distortions in space around his ship. The fabric of reality was being twisted by forces that could crush stars. The attack should have been impossible to survive, but the Stellar Fang existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The space-time collapse only affected one layer of reality. The ship continued to move through alternate dimensions unharmed. The alien fleet was becoming desperate. Their most advanced weapons were useless against technology they could not understand. The humans had somehow created something that violated the basic laws of physics. Commander Bo-Ram coordinated with the remaining human ships to help the Stellar Fang in its hunt. The conventional vessels could not damage the enemy, but they could provide tactical information. The human fleet began herding the Vorthok ships into tighter formations. The alien commanders did not realize they were being manipulated. They thought the human ships were just trying to survive. Captain Hyun-Ki watched the battle with amazement. The tide had completely turned. One small ship was destroying the most powerful fleet in galactic history. The impossible was becoming reality. The Stellar Fang had destroyed over half the enemy fleet, but Teho was beginning to feel the strain. The neural interface was pushing his brain beyond human limits. The constant flow of information was overwhelming. He could feel his consciousness expanding beyond his physical body. The ship systems were becoming part of his mind. The boundary between pilot and machine was disappearing. Sumin saw the danger in the bio readings from the neural interface. Teho was approaching the limits of human endurance. The ship was changing him in ways that might be irreversible, but there was no choice. The battle had to continue. The Vorthok fleet was still large enough to destroy Earth if they regrouped and focused their remaining firepower. The Stellar Fang moved through the enemy formation like a force of nature. The ship had become more than a weapon. It was evolution in action. Human creativity merged with artificial intelligence. Admiral Krelvox made a desperate decision. He ordered all remaining ships to form a defensive sphere around Earth. If they could not find their attacker, they would complete their original mission. The Vorthok fleet began to regroup, positioning themselves for a final assault on the human homeworld. Their weapons were still powerful enough to destroy all life on the planet. Teho saw the enemy movement through the ship's sensors. The aliens were preparing to glass Earth's surface with their remaining firepower. He had to stop them before they could complete their formation. The Stellar Fang accelerated beyond the speed of light, folding space around itself. The ship appeared in the middle of the enemy formation. Before they could react this time, Teho did not create small targeted black holes. Instead, he channeled all the ship's power into one massive gravitational weapon. The artificial black hole was larger than anything he had created before. The gravitational anomaly began pulling in everything within a 1,000-kilometer radius. Enemy ships were dragged toward the event horizon, their hulls stretched and torn by tidal forces. The Vorthok fleet scattered in panic as the black hole consumed dozens of their vessels. The survivors fled in all directions, abandoning their formation and their mission, but the weapon was too powerful. Teho could not control it completely. The black hole began to grow, feeding on the matter and energy it consumed. The gravitational field threatened to consume everything in the area. A Stellar Fang itself was being pulled toward the event horizon. The ship that could phase through matter and exist in multiple dimensions was still subject to the laws of gravity. Teho pushed the neural interface to its absolute limit, channeling all his will into controlling the runaway weapon. He felt his consciousness stretching across space-time as he fought to contain the artificial black hole the ship AI merged completely with his mind, creating a hybrid intelligence that transcended both human and machine. The combined consciousness reached out across dimensions to grab hold of the gravitational anomaly slowly. Carefully, they began to collapse the black hole back into stable containment. The process required precision beyond anything attempted before. One mistake would destroy the solar system. The gravitational weapon finally stabilized and disappeared, leaving only scattered debris where the Vortex formation had been. The surviving enemy ships were fleeing toward the edge of the system. Admiral Krelvox had lost 2/3 of his fleet to a single human vessel. The survivors were in full retreat, abandoning their conquest of Earth, the greatest military disaster in Vorthak history was complete. But the battle was not over yet. The stellar Fang pursued the fleeing ships, determined to ensure they could never return to threaten humanity again. The hunt continued through the outer solar system as the ghost ship eliminated the last remnants of the invasion fleet. The impossible weapon had proven that human ingenuity could overcome any odds. The surviving Vorthak ships fled toward the edge of the solar system, their formations scattered and broken. Admiral Krelvox had lost over 2,000 vessels to a single enemy ship that his sensors could not even detect. But Tejo was not finished. The neural interface had changed him beyond recognition. His consciousness now existed partially in multiple dimensions. His mind could process information at superhuman speeds. The Stellar Fang had also evolved during the battle. The ship AI had learned from every attack, every defense, every moment of combat. The vessel was no longer just a weapon, it had become something approaching true intelligence. Together, pilot and ship pursued the fleeing enemy through the asteroid belt. The Vorthek ships tried to use the rocky debris as cover, but the Stellar Fang could track them through multiple dimensions. Admiral Krelvox ordered his remaining fleet to jump to hyperspace and retreat to Vorthak territory, but the ghost ship appeared wherever they tried to escape. The enemy seemed to know their movements before they made them. Captain Hyunki watched the pursuit from the command station. The tactical displays showed the Stellar Fang moving through space faster than anything in their records. The ship was breaking the laws of physics with every maneuver. The alien fleet tried one desperate tactic. They scattered in all directions, hoping to confuse their pursuer. Some ships would escape while others were destroyed. It was a sacrifice they had never needed to make before, but the Stellar Fang could be in multiple places at once. The ship existed across several dimensions simultaneously. Tejo could attack targets separated by vast distances at the exact same moment. One by one, the fleeing ships were eliminated. The artificial black holes appeared inside their hulls without warning, consuming the vessels from within. Their advanced shields and armor meant nothing against weapons that ignored conventional. Space Commander Bioram realized what was happening. The Stellar Fang was not just winning the battle, it was ensuring complete victory. No enemy ship would escape to report what had happened here. The human fleet spread out across the solar system to block potential escape routes. The conventional ships could not match Vorthek technology, but they could provide sensor coverage and tactical support. Engineer Haywon monitored the ship systems from the research station. The Stellar Fang was operating at power levels that should have been impossible. The energy core was producing output beyond all theoretical limits. Dr. Sumin watched the bio readings from Tejo neural interface. The pilot had transcended normal human consciousness. The connection to the ship had created something entirely new. Less than 200 Vorthok ships remained from the original fleet of 3,000. They clustered together in a tight, defensive formation, hoping their combined firepower could protect them. Admiral Krelvox knew his military career was over. Even if he survived this battle, he would face execution for losing the most powerful fleet in galactic history. The humans had achieved the impossible. Stellar Fang approached the final enemy formation slowly, like a predator, savoring the moment of victory. The ship had evolved far beyond its original design. The vessel was now pure destruction given form. Tejo could feel the fear radiating from the enemy ships through the neural interface. Their crews knew they were about to die, but had no way to fight back against a weapon they could not see or understand. He began the final attack, creating multiple black holes simultaneously around the enemy formation. The gravitational weapons appeared without warning, consuming ships faster than the eye could follow. The Vorthak fleet tried to break formation and scatter, but it was too late. The artificial black holes had created a gravitational maze. that trapped them in a shrinking pocket of Space Admiral Krelvox watched his remaining ships disappear one by one. The most advanced military force in the galaxy was being systematically eliminated by a single human vessel. He transmitted a final message to Vorthak High Command warning them about the humans and their impossible technology, but the message was cut short as his own ship was consumed by the approaching singularity. The last enemy vessels were pulled into the artificial black holes, their hulls stretched and torn apart by tidal forces. The explosions created a brief new constellation in Earth's sky. Then suddenly space was quiet. The Vorthak fleet had been completely destroyed. Not a single enemy ship remained to carry word of their defeat back to the Empire. The stellar Fang hung motionless in space, surrounded by the debris of the greatest military disaster in galactic history. The small ship that everyone said was impossible had achieved total victory. Tahoe slowly disconnected from the neural interface, feeling his consciousness contract back into normal human dimensions. The battle was over, but he had been forever changed by the experienced commander. Bahram could hardly believe the sensor readings. The entire enemy fleet had been eliminated by one small vessel, the tactical computers. "We're still trying to process what had happened." Captain Hyanki stared out at the debris field that had once been 3,000 warships. The Vorthak Empire had sent their greatest fleet to conquer Earth. Instead, they had gifted humanity with the galaxy's greatest military victory. The human ships began rescue operations, searching for survivors among their own forces. The conventional fleet had suffered losses, but nothing compared to the enemy devastation. Dr. Sumin watched the stellar Fang return to the research station. Her impossible ship had exceeded every prediction. The vessel had not just won a battle, it had redefined what was possible. The ship looked different now. Its hull seemed to shimmer between dimensions the surface absorbed. Not just light, but reality itself. The stellar Fang had become something beyond normal matter. Teho landed the ship in the underground hangar, but he could not fully disconnect from its systems. The neural interface had created permanent changes. In his brain, he would never be completely human again. Earth had been saved by the genius of one engineer, the courage of one pilot, and the impossible ship they created together. The Vorthak Empire had learned that humans could not be underestimated. News of the victory spread across human space colonies that had prepared for invasion instead celebrated the greatest triumph in their species' history. The age of human expansion was about to begin. The galaxy would remember this day as the moment when a small blue planet announced its presence among the stars. One ship had defeated 3,000. The impossible had become reality. In the depths of space, other alien civilizations picked up scattered transmissions about the battle. The Vorthak Empire, the greatest military power known to galactic civilization, had been completely destroyed by humans. The balance of power had shifted forever. Earth was no longer a primitive world to be conquered. It was a force that could challenge empires that had ruled for millennia. The stellar Fang sat in its hangar waiting for its next mission. The ship that had seemed like fantasy had become the foundation of human military might. The vessel would spawn a new generation of impossible weapons. Teho looked at his creation with pride and wonder. The small ship had changed everything. Humanity now had the power to defend itself and explore the galaxy as equals rather than prey. The stars were calling, and humanity was finally ready to answer. The countdown reached 0 and Earth had not surrendered. Admiral Krelvox was not surprised. Most primitive species chose to fight rather than accept the inevitable. Their pride always overcame their intelligence. He gave the order to begin the attack. The Vorthak fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Each ship charged its weapons and prepared to demonstrate the power of galactic civilization. The human fleet waited in defensive positions around Earth. Their ships looked like toys compared to the massive alien vessels, but they held their ground, preparing to fight for their home. World Commander Bahram watched the tactical display as the enemy fleet approached. Her ships were outnumbered 7-1 and completely outgunned, but she had to try. Every minute they delayed gave more time for evacuation ships to escape. The first human ships opened fire when the enemy came within range. Their weapons were primitive compared to Vorthak technology, but they fired everything they had. Missiles and energy beams streaked through space toward the advancing fleet. The Vorthak shields absorbed the attack without any visible effect. The human weapons simply disappeared when they hit the energy barriers. The alien hulls were not even scratched by the most powerful weapons Earth could produce. Admiral Krelvox smiled with satisfaction. The humans were fighting exactly as expected. Their weapons were useless against superior technology. This would be over quickly. Deep underground, in the research station, Taeho was climbing into the pilot seat of the Stellar Fang. Dr. Sumin ran final checks on all systems. The ship was ready for launch, but they had to wait for the perfect moment. The plan was to launch during the chaos of the main battle. When the Vorthic fleet was distracted by the human ships, the Stellar Fang would slip out undetected. The enemy would never see it coming. Taeho connected to the neural interface and felt the familiar rush of power flowing through his mind. The ship systems came alive, responding to his thoughts and emotions. He could feel the energy core humming with barely contained force. The launch bay doors opened, revealing the battle raging in space above. Human ships were exploding under the devastating firepower of the Vorthic fleet. The alien weapons tore through Earth defenses like paper. Sumin gave the launch command, and the Stellar Fang shot upward through the underground tunnel. The ship moved faster than any human vessel had ever traveled, leaving the planet's surface in seconds. The moment they reached space, Taeho activated the stealth systems. The ship became invisible to all sensors, bending light around its hull. The Vorthic fleet had no idea that their hunter was already among them. The Stellar Fang moved through the battle like a ghost, passing between the massive alien ships without being detected. The enemy was focused on destroying the human fleet and did not notice the small vessel in their midst. Taeho could see the Vorthic flagship through the ship's sensors. It was enormous, larger than some cities on Earth. The hull was covered in weapons that could destroy entire continents with single shots. He selected his target and activated the primary weapon system. The ship created a tiny black hole directly inside the enemy flagship. The gravitational anomaly appeared without warning in the vessel's reactor core. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The artificial black hole began consuming matter and energy from inside the ship. The flagship reactor exploded as its containment fields were torn apart by impossible forces. The massive vessel imploded in seconds, crushed by its own gravitational field. The explosion lit up space like a new star visible from Earth's surface. The shockwave destroyed several smaller ships nearby. Admiral Krelvox could not believe what he was seeing. His flagship, the most powerful warship in the galaxy, had been destroyed by an unknown weapon. The explosion had come from inside the ship, somehow bypassing all shields and armor. Chaos erupted in the Vorthic fleet as commanders tried to understand what had happened. Their sensors showed no enemy ships in the area. No weapons fire, no explanation for the destruction. Stellar Fang had already moved to its next target. Taeho selected a massive battlecruiser and created another black hole inside its hull. The ship was torn apart by tidal forces that no material could resist. Captain Hyun-ki watched from the command station as impossible readings flooded their sensors. One small ship was systematically destroying the largest fleet in galactic history, the tactical display showed. Vorthic vessels simply vanishing from existence. The alien fleet tried to regroup, but they could not locate their attacker. The Stellar Fang moved through their formation like a shark, among fish, striking without warning and disappearing before they could respond. Taeho felt the power of the ship flowing through his nervous system. The neural interface allowed him to control the weapons with pure thought. The black holes appeared wherever he wanted them, consuming everything they touched. The Vorthic tried everything to stop their invisible enemy. They fired quantum torpedoes in all directions, hoping to hit something. They deployed energy nets that could trap any known spacecraft. They even tried to collapse local space-time. Nothing worked. The Stellar Fang adapted to each new defense. The ship's AI learned from every attack, developing countermeasures faster than the enemy could implement. The Admiral Krelvox ordered his remaining ships to concentrate their firepower on empty space. If they could not see their attacker, they would destroy everything in the area. The combined fleet fired simultaneously, creating a storm of energy that could vaporize planets. The Stellar Fang simply phased through the attack, existing in multiple dimensions at once. The enemy weapons passed through the ship without effect, like trying to hit a ghost with physical objects. Taeho continued his methodical destruction of the fleet. Each shot was perfectly placed, creating maximum damage with minimum energy. The artificial black holes consumed ship after ship, leaving nothing but expanding clouds of gas. The Vorthak fleet that had conquered 47 star systems was being destroyed by a single human vessel. The most advanced civilization in the galaxy could not stop one small ship with impossible weapons, Commander. Bahram could hardly believe the sensor readings. The secret project was working beyond all expectations. The Stellar Fang was single-handedly turning the tide of battle. The surviving human ships watched in amazement as their most powerful enemy was systematically eliminated. The impossible was happening right before their eyes. One ship was defeating thousands. Dr. Sumin monitored the battle from the research station. Her creation was performing perfectly. The ship that everyone said could not be built was proving that human engineering could create miracles. The Stellar Fang moved through the enemy fleet like death itself, striking without mercy or hesitation. Each attack was more devastating than the last as Teho learned to use the ship's full potential. The Vorthak formation began to break apart as panic spread through the fleet. Commanders who had never known defeat were watching their invincible ships disappear one by one. Admiral Krelvox realized that his perfect record was about to end. The humans had somehow created a weapon that could destroy his entire fleet. He had to make a choice: fight to the end or retreat to save what remained. The battle that was supposed to last 1 hour had become a nightmare that threatened to consume the greatest military force in galactic history. The Stellar Fang continued its hunt, moving through space like a predator that had found its prey. The impossible was happening, and the galaxy would never be the same.